It's showtime. Broadway set designer and model railroader Clark Dunham created this layout for Doug DeBay's new Toy Train Museum and Train Store located in West Des Moines, Iowa. Dunham used theatrical lighting, stagecraft, and dazzling backdrops to fashion a layout which is fanciful, realistic, and spectacular. There's a deep river gorge, high mountains, lush clouds, passenger stations, freight stations, farms, big cities, little towns, a bookstore, and bridges, a sensational 8-foot-long viaduct, a gas station with an airplane, men at work, kids at play, a sleek streamliner riding on clouds, and of course, the factory where lifesavers are made. Dunham's model world is semi-real and semi-fantasy. Often the two blend.
I had this experience as a kid at the 1939 World's Fair of seeing huge trains passing over high bridges, only years later to remember that it was me as a kid looking up at O-scale trains. And I have tried to incorporate that feeling in all the layouts I've done that will be seen by lots of kids.
In designing a layout, Dunham's first step is to arrive at the basic idea.
What does the person viewing a model train think he or she sees? And I think that he or she sees what they saw in the catalogs that we as kids all looked at and yearned for.
The backdrops suggest an Art Deco style of art, similar to the 1930 Lionel catalog cover.
Taking items from the Lionel catalog, the Lionel factory, the Hellgate Bridge, and putting them into a fantasy landscape, which is behind a series of buildings which are clearly not real buildings, but which carry out that semi-real, semi-fantasy world that these trains fit into. The entire idea, in my mind, is to be playful, to bring only the good memories back, and to retain that child and young adult in all of us that is always there, which sometimes hides from us more than we would like it to. But basically, I guess the idea is to promote joy, and I think that's the right thing to do. It's what we need more of in our lives.
The layout measures 20 by 40 feet. A protective railing extending 3 feet surrounds the layout. Angles interrupt the rectangle shape to allow a variety of views. There are 4 levels starting at 24 inches off the ground and stepping up in approximate 6-inch increments to 4 feet 6 inches at the mountain area. The 2 bottom levels are simple loops. The O-Gauge Santa Fe operates on the lowest level, and an American Flyer Missouri Pacific on the next step up. Each make 2 station stops. Four trains operate on the 3rd level. A Rock Island 040 switcher leaves its shed, goes behind the station, stops, and returns. Two 2-car sets of Bud and MU cars share a loop. They alternate between waiting at the turnout and making the rounds, which includes a stop at the commuter station. The 4th train on the 3rd level, a grain train headed by a Rock Island Jeep, travels a loop at the front half of the layout opposite the mountain. Appropriately, the grain train makes stops at the grain silos. The top level has 2 mainline loops, 1 passenger and 1 freight. A Great Northern F3 diesel and a Wabash 462 steamer operate on the passenger loop. 2 freights, one headed by a Southern Pacific switcher, and another by a Chicago and Northwestern Jeep occupy the freight loops.
There are 4 main levels, but that fourth level actually represents 3 levels. The main upper level of the layout is a triple figure 8. And each time it crosses itself above itself. So it starts out at 3 feet 3 inches at the front of the layout and winds up at 4 feet 6 inches at the back of the layout.
The bottom 2 levels, those most likely to be viewed by little people, are the most fanciful. The upper levels, those which will be seen by adults, are the more realistic. But there's fancy there too, to help transport the adults back to when they were dreaming about toy trains. Dunham uses a design device called selective compression to create the illusion of depth. Using a bandsaw, Dunham changes the configuration of the buildings, cutting them in half and using the back half as another front. By reducing the depth of the buildings, more space is allowed for the trains. And by reusing the back portion, you get more buildings out of the same number of kits. This K-Line Airport hangar is a good example of selective compression.
The kit is cut not quite in half, so both buildings have slightly different dimensions. And then it's laid up against the cloud background. We find also that sometimes backs of buildings and parts of other buildings wind up mingling later on to form other parts of a backdrop. Around on the other side, there's a flyer station and a complete city behind it that occupies only 4 inches.
The modified buildings blend into the backdrops, which extend the illusion of depth. The backdrops also help hide the visual lulls between the different levels. The bottom 2 levels are separated by a backdrop of skyscrapers and clouds. The backdrop rises above the S-gauge track so that the Missouri Pacific and the entire upper portion of the layout appears to be floating on clouds.
It lightens the look. It increases, I think, a sense of playfulness with the layout and underlines the sense of fun and fantasy that I think we all feel, that I certainly feel about all of these things that we do.
The Broadway musical always strives for a spectacular opening, something that will grab the audience and rivet them to their seats. Dunham has brought that Broadway tradition to layout building. Upon entering, the first thing a visitor sees is the giant Lifesaver factory. It's set against a dramatic 6-foot-tall backdrop of smokestacks, belching thick white smoke against a rich blue sky. It works. People stop in their tracks. Originally, the Lifesaver factory was a Scale Architects model of an ammonia plant which Doug purchased at auction. Rather than keep it a drab and dull and environment-threatening ammonia factory, Clark painted it bright colors and turned it into a delightful Lifesaver factory. Eventually, there will be Lionel Lifesaver tank cars parked on a siding in front. Dubé's proposal, received by Dunham in March 1992, included a well-thought-out list of specs. Among Dubé's requirements were the trains be Lionel, 4 seasons be represented, Dubé would supply the track and a number of structures from his collection, plus the size, cost, completion date, and that the layout conformed to museum safety standards.
The truck arrived at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. The entire layout was standing as you see it, minus the railings and plexiglass, at 5 o'clock that evening.
6 weeks to build the layout and 1 day to install it. That seemed fast to us, but after we saw the videotape of the installation, we understood how Dunham and his staff get things done so quickly. Clark Dunham has combined his two great loves, the Broadway stage and toy trains, to create a layout which evokes memories and images of a time when all a kid dreamed about was building the biggest and the best toy train layout in the world. And maybe, just maybe, this is it.
The type of layout that I was really looking to build was one that I could operate the trains and show the operation of all the accessories. The trains are so much more fun when they're active and animated and moving. I like the noise. The layout basically allows me to collect the items that I like, to display the items that I like so that the stuff is there to be seen by myself or anyone else who comes to visit. I really wanted to show people what this stuff was. It's so wonderful. So the department store or the store type layout where you can put the pieces out is really what I tried to do. I like to operate the accessories, get the trains running at all times, which is just a lot of fun. There's 4 loops here. We have an outside standard gauge loop with a passing siding. Then there is a dedicated wide radius O-gauge loop to run Hudsons, Hiawathas, 752, Union Pacifics and such. Then in the middle of it all, I built what I would consider to be the type of layout any kid would have loved to have. There's 2 loops connected by track switches so that you can run from one loop into the other, all the way in, all the way out, a reversing loop, a passing siding for the freight work that can be done so that you can hag cars down by the cranes and by the log loaders and still operate them while running trains. So you can get 4 separate trains running at one time. Makes a lot of nice tin plate noise. Well, right now I'm using 2 ZW type transformers, a 275 watt, and 2 early Z type transformers. The early Zs tend to produce a little more power, and with the amount of lighting I'm using here, I need their extra effort, extra electrical, availability to keep up on the layouts. The switches, I'm running a set of, 1 set of wide radius O-gauge switches and 6 pairs of standard O22 type switches, which allows me to take and pull the trains in and out of the center loops and off and on. The trains that are running are basically an example of what comes off the shelves. The number 1700 Lionel Jr. I just like to run because it's so animated and most people don't see the train run. I then run, in my next line out on this freight track, I run a nice 258 hauling a long string of 2600 series cars. A lot of color, a lot of clickety-clack, a lot of fun. Then on the wide radius dedicated O-gauge loop, I'll usually run either a 260 Lionel steamer with a set of 800 series freights, or lately I've been having fun running a 763 with a set of full-scale, semi-scale type freight cars, along with a 227 switcher cut in, all in a full set of 2800 series tin plate cars. The outside loop has always got some standard gauge on it, and I usually will run a train for about 2 months or so before I get tired of watching it go around, and I'll bring another one down off the board. Presently we're running a number 1770 I's engine, which is the transition engine. It's actually a 390 Lionel, with a series of 500 series freight cars. The layout measures 23 feet long by 14 feet across. It's set into a basement, pretty much takes up a wall-to-wall type of an arrangement. At flea markets and scrap sales, I was buying quarter plate mirrors. They're usually $3 or so for a 4x6 section. I proceeded to cut them down to 18 inches tall and mounted them down one wall so that when you look at the trains, you see yourself in the mirrors and you see the layout kind of like from both sides because the mirrors reflect back into itself. The first thing I do when I buy a train is I'll bring it in and I will spend usually a week to 2 weeks tearing it down, getting it mechanically sound again. If it has a problem, I'll repair it. Replacement of wheels is a necessity in many of the things that I collect. But all the trains that are on the shelves are all designed and all, in my own mind, designed to be run, and therefore they shall be run. Lionel created a wonderful, warm, live art in these toys, and the art really is in the colors, in the way that they move, and the noise that they make, even just slamming down the rails, the clickety-clack and the rattle-trap sound. In fact, probably some of the cars that I enjoy the most to run are the little four-wheel 800 series. They just have just the right sound going down the rail. And it's very soothing, very calming. Even after all this time of, going on almost 9 years of collecting with a fever, I still get nervous and I still get a little sweaty palms when I'm getting into a deal, because it's something that, it excites me, it makes me feel good, and I enjoy it. This is the number 165 magnetic crane with the aluminum superstructure, known to be made in 1940. Difficult piece to find in good shape, mostly because the booms become broken. They're difficult to store and put away without being damaged. We're now looking at the 1941 rare gray variation. Some people feel the reason that they're gray is because of material shortages. The paints were not available to paint them aluminum. A very desirable piece. These are two number 48 whistling stations, manufactured from 1937 to 42. There are two variations here. The one on the right has got the orange roof, the one on the left has the red roof. They sound fairly nice. A number 349 flashing crossing signal, manufactured in 1929 and 1930 only. Very similar to the Lionel number 79, except it has a cast iron base. Using the books, which are probably the most important thing to own if you get into this, is books, reference books. The McComas and Toohey books, the Greenberg books, the O'Brien books, all give little bits of information that, when all put together, allow you to construct a very sound basis to what you're looking for. But the first thing that my friends started telling me when I started getting into collecting is that the best thing you can do is go out and get the information out of the books. And from that knowledge, start to build what you want and collect what you want. This last Christmas, I was sitting down here, kind of just contemplating, looking at everything, almost a little overwhelmed by all the different things, from the 126 stations to the 117s, the 113s, to looking at all the simple streetlights I have. And she snuck down with the camera and caught me in a very pensive mood, just kind of with my hand against my cheek, looking out, going, "What have I done?"
In 1987, Ron Zweig was in the market to buy a house. Walt Kehrer had his house up for sale and was being told by his real estate agent that his partially built O-gauge layout would have to be torn down. Fortunately, Ron and Walt met.
Our children had gotten married and left home, and we decided to sell the big house and look for something smaller. And we spent a while house hunting, not finding anything. And one day we came upon a house that was just going on the market, and my wife and I went in to take a look, and the lady of the house showed my wife the upstairs while her husband said, "I want to show you something downstairs." So I went downstairs, and there was the beginning of a great layout.
35 years ago, a similar thing happened to Ron. He had completed the bench work for an HO layout, but before he could finish, he had to move. When he saw Walt's layout, he smiled. and thought how life has a nice way of evening things out.
So I came upstairs and told my wife we ought to buy the house. She said, but you haven't seen it. I said, well, I've seen enough. And she liked the upstairs, and we made a deal.
For Ron, this was an ideal situation. The part of layout building Ron liked least, the bench work, had already been masterfully done. And the part of layout building Ron liked best, creating scenery and building structures, had not been started. And Ron found more than a layout. He found a new friend. Walt eventually bought a house about a mile away.
And every Tuesday night, Walter comes over and helps me work on the layout, and he claims he has the best of both worlds. Now, you know, his layout is continuing, and yet he doesn't have to do all the work.
We'll start our tour at the Roundhouse. The Roundhouse is a Korber kit. Sooth smoke units, the same units used in Williams and Weber steamers, produce the smoke. The turntable is a 105 scale-foot diamond structure kit. The power feed comes in through the top rotating bracket, just like on real turntables. Al Gomecko created the circus and the numerous animations scattered about the layout. A Lionel 785 Hudson pulls a line of finely detailed scale circus cars made by Dave Reichart of Wilmington, Delaware. Ron replaced the scale trucks and couplers with Lionel trucks and couplers. The row houses are by International Hobby of Philadelphia. There's a park in front of the row houses surrounded by a trolley line. The 3 Bowser trolleys are controlled by relays and take the folks from the neighborhood to the downtown shopping area located at the other end of the line. It's the 50s, before shopping malls, and the downtown business district is alive with activity. There's the first comical bank, Harry Movall the barber, an outdoor cafe, a man getting his shoes shined, and another hailing a taxi. For the swells, there's the Swank Club Royale Hotel, scratch built by Ron and featuring fine detail right down to draperies in the windows. The other buildings are scratch built using Korber fronts. A 115 Lionel City Station, reminiscent of the Pennsylvania Railroad station in Newark, and 8 156 station platforms make up the passenger area on the lower level. 4 156 station platforms take care of the passengers on the upper level. The illuminated headlights and blinking turn signals add a nice touch of realism to the traffic scenes. The headlights are grain of wheat bulbs, and the blinking effect is achieved by installing an electronic circuit. The industrial area features large and medium-sized factories, all with quirky names. There's the I.C. Berg Refrigerator Company, the Lawston Foundry, the Spare Tire Company, the Legendary, and the R.U. Knotts Lumberyard.
I'm not a collector. I like to operate the trains, but I also like action on the layout, and that's why I have a lot of action-oriented either accessories or other features, whether it's the backhoe digging in the street or the house on fire and so on. I have it so that when people come and look at it, I think they enjoy looking at it, even though they may not be railroad model builders or really into railroading. It's a fun layout, and there are a lot of hidden things on it, and people sometimes look at the layout 2 or 3 times before, and they're always discovering things on it that they missed the first time around, which is the fun of it. Yeah, I like the Lionel trains and some of the others, but I also like scale appearance. So what I decided was to build what some people refer to as high rail, but it's running Lionel engines on a scale-looking layout, with Gargrave track and scale-type scenery, scale-type structures, and trying to blend them. I'm trying to blend Lionel scenery, or Lionel accessories rather, into scale scenery, which I think we've done fairly successfully.
The upper level has 2 mains, both powered by overhead wiring. The lower level has 3 mains, all with sidings. 4 of the 5 loops are controlled by 24-volt relays. Relays also operate the crossing gates. 3 ZWs power the 5 mains and the trolley line. A Lionel Z transformer powers the turntable, street lights, and crossing gates.
I run everything from some post-war pieces to all the newer things, the new scale Hudson, the MUs. I like to run, obviously, now a lot of overhead electric rectifiers and so on, because we have the catenary system up.
Zweig likes to operate other engines, too.
Now we're running on that the express relay.
We're not going to duplicate this in my lifetime or anything else. This is Ron's masterpiece.
The dictionary defines masterpiece as a work done with extraordinary skill and exceptional artistic achievement. Masterpiece, a good word to describe Ron Zweig's layout. It just shows what hard work and talent can accomplish. And to think it was almost all torn down.
Bruce Lawrence started with a small American Flyer S-gauge layout.
I had 2 trains when I was a kid, and I used to play with them all the time. So I came on back home and found the old trains and took them back out, and after that it just kind of snowballed.
After building a nice 6x9 layout, Bruce wanted to expand into the adjoining family room.
What I wanted to really do is I wanted to try to get 2 trains running around the whole family room, or should I say train room now, since it kind of like took over most of it.
Bruce didn't stop at the family room.
So I kind of like asked my wife Sheila, and we kind of agreed that we could expand into the laundry room. So we did some modification with the plumbing and everything, and the rest of it turned out pretty good.
So what we have here is a layout which started on a 6x9 plywood table, then expanded out along the wall of the family room, over the side entrance stairs, to an oil field above the Lazy Boy, over a Gilbert erector bridge on the mantel above the fireplace, past the industrial area next to the bookcase, through a tunnel into the laundry room, past the dryer, workbench, and washing machine, through another tunnel, over a permanent bridge which has to be ducked under each time you enter or leave the laundry room, and back to the original layout. We think Sheila is a very understanding wife.
A very most understanding wife. Back in 1978, I was by my friend's house, and I saw his old Flyer trains, and I think I started getting a bug right then to start collecting and operating the old trains I had when I was a kid. I'm pretty much loyal to Flyer right now. Nothing beats good old 2-rail track. That's the way trains supposed to be run. I got a lot of friends that are Lionel collectors and operators. I don't know. We all have our own fun, okay? That's the main thing. I'll stay out of that one.
Both Lionel and American Flyer made operating milk cars. While similar in appearance, the cars differ in a number of ways. American Flyer's milkman is black. Lionel's cream. Lionel has 1 opening on each side. American Flyer, 2. And on the Lionel car, the cans are loaded through an opening on the roof. You load the Flyer car by opening a door and dropping the cans down a ramp. But in spite of these differences, both cars have one thing in common: erratic performance.
I told you this is a flawless operation. No problem at all.
Other Flyer accessories include the oil drum loader, featuring Louie the Loader.
That's what they call it, good old Gabe the lamplighter. He's the guy that climbs up the ladder and turns on that light and he goes back down. It has, in the last few years, become a very, very desirable accessory. Lately, I've been seeing some of the Gabes going from $700 up to $1,000. You are paying for the rarity and also the quality, too. But I have mine on the layout. I don't want to see it in the box because then I'm not going to have any fun with it.
Bruce wanted to build a toy train layout like those built in the 50s.
I got plywood, Homosote, plus the roadbed, and it makes a very quiet layout, and you could hear the choo-choo. And you got to hear the choo-choo.
His goal was
to have fun with some toy trains. And I enjoy it because you're always building something all the time. I have more fun building it than actually operating it, but operating is still a lot of fun too. And a lot of times we'll get a lot of guys over here and we just have a ball all day long. And I just say, guys, take it away, go have some fun. And I'll sit back and watch, and it's really nice. They'll bring some trains to run too, because a lot of guys don't have a layout and they don't have any place to run it, so I said, bring it over here and we'll do it here, and let's see what happens.
The trains operate at the same speed, whether next to the transformer or 30 feet away. Bruce attributes this to good connections and the use of feeder wires.
Make sure that your connections are really good with all your track. And what I've done is to make pretty much a good running layout is solder the wires to the track and have feeders every few feet so you never lose any power.
Bruce's collection is displayed on the walls in the train room and on both sides of the partition, which separates the train room and the family room.
I like the trains from the very late 40s to the middle to late 50s, right around there, because that's what I really remember when I was a kid. Anything old that Flyer made is fine with me. I do enjoy steamers the most, though. Passenger trains are okay, but steamers with smoke and choo-choo is the way to go. But sometimes you got to be an adult to have all the toys that you wanted to have when you were a kid. You never have all the toys that you want to have, okay? But what I have right now, I think it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
All this started 12 years ago. Now Sheila and Bruce have 2 boys, and they are eyeing Dad's space for things like ping pong tables and air hockey.
I've had the layout up since I built the layout starting in 1979, so it's been an easy 12 years plus that it's been up. And I think it's time for me to take it down, and I have to give a little bit more to my 2 boys and the wife. So we're going to put the trains away for a few years, and then someday they're coming back out.
Michael Premack receives, as almost everyone does, telephone calls. The Premacks have several phones. There is one in the basement, and when that one rings, Mike always knows what the call will be about. Toy trains. Michael Premack is not in the toy train business. He is a dentist, but he does have a toy train layout, and that is where the phone in the basement comes in. It is part of the layout. 2 phones, actually. Premack and another operator can call each other on these phones, becoming dispatchers, ordering cars delivered to towns, making up consists from a switchyard for drop-offs at various sidings along the main line. Often, the other operator is Primac's son, William.
Hello?
Hello, Will. I need 2 culvert cars, a log car, and a coal car in that order, okay? And hurry up.
Okay, 2 culvert cars, 1 log car, and 1 coal car. Got it.
A mountain separates 2 towns. It is situated so the dispatchers cannot see each other. It also envelops the trains, which Premack likes.
For something to be interesting to watch for any period of time, you don't want to see the train at all times. I think the train has to disappear. It can go into a tunnel. It can go under the table someplace or a hidden track and then suddenly reappear and then disappear again. If you see the train all the time or is just going around in a circle, it gets kind of boring quite quickly.
None of the switching on the 25 by 25 foot layout is done by hand. Every train, every engine, every car is moved without touching it. The idea is to assemble a train consist in a proper sequence, or to fill orders for specific cars, such as Premack's order to Will for 2 culvert cars. Passenger trains run on a schedule on the main line, and the operators have to do their switching without running into them. The whole operation is designed to simulate the operation of real railroads. To learn how those worked, Premack studied them.
I went down to several places in Illinois, southern Illinois, around Kankakee and several other small towns there, and I watched trains operate, and I watched sidings operate, and small industries operate.
Premack originally had a more conventional layout in this basement. It had all Lionel equipment, including accessories, track, and switches. He was happy enough with it, but something gnawed at him. He wanted his switchyard to look better than it did. Lionel switches were the problem. They kept tracks too far apart for a switchyard to look realistic. In 4 feet of space, the width Premack had available to him, Lionel switches would allow the placement of only 6 tracks side by side. At a local train meet, Premack saw a display of custom switches by Steve Bernyson.
When I told him about the ideas I wanted to incorporate in a layout, he was really quite helpful and helped me basically design the main track line, or the main track plan of the layout. And with his switches, I was able to get the tracks closer together, and they had the look of a real railroad.
The Bernyson design switches would allow Premack to place 15 tracks side by side in the same area that Lionel switches would allow only 6 tracks. With the switch problem solved, Premack could turn to scenery, much of which is rather striking. The mountain, partly crafted out of dental plaster, looms over the 2 towns, one called Hillside and the other Heaven, so named because that's where Mike's wife says he is when he's playing with his trains. A deep river gorge is spanned by a trestle bridge that offers the kind of dramatic vista usually associated with HO layouts. Premack achieved this scale look by building the mountain from the ceiling all the way to the floor, not stopping at table height like most tin platers do. The mountain, almost 8 feet high, is 15 feet long and sprinkled with colorful trees.
Some of the trees were bought in the store, ready-mades, but these tall pines were made by, they're a taper dowel and some like crinkly papers glued on. We put gray paint on here with a black wash, and this is steel wool sprinkled with green foam.
Conforming to his wish to have trains that pass from view, there are 2 tunnels on different levels. Premack could not find tunnel portals that were wide enough to accommodate 2 sets of tracks. So he cut single portals in half and spliced in extra sections to achieve the required width. The track is Gargrave's T-rail.
Looks pretty much like real. It has wooden ties. You can also bend it to any radius you want. The trains are controlled by ZW transformers, and each control panel, of which there are 2, has 2 ZW transformers. Each ZW controls one of the main line and the yard. It's the double main line layout, and each main line is capable of running about 3 to 4 trains. There's a block signal system here that works on relays. 8 trains could be run at one time, and of those 8 trains running, any one train could be taken out of the main loop and brought into the switch yard for disassembly. There are some sidings on the layout that store things. We have a snowplow on one siding over here. There's a logging siding. There are about 70 switches on this layout, and they're basically 3 types. Standard, I think we call number 6 switch. There are curved switches. There are 3-way switches where one track is coming up the middle and 2 peel off to the side. Those are in the double-ended switch yard. Side pull trains anywhere from 10 to 15, maybe 17 cars. Unless you have magnetic traction or some kind of traction, the engines just are going to slip and slide, and they just don't do very well. So I probably have to say all my good pullers now are MPC engines. And I stayed with plastic build buildings instead of O-scale buildings because the plastic build to me was kind of nostalgic. These are the buildings I had when I was a kid. And they're the exact buildings I had when I was a kid. They haven't changed at all. They were the same ones I had when I was younger. Some of these buildings are probably, not giving my age away, about 40 years old.
Premack's accessories are also from the era of his youth, all in good operating order. The Lionel newsstand, the 497 coaling station, the microwave relay tower, the 456 coal ramp, the operating horse car and corral, the rear floodlight tower, the 342 culvert loader, the radar antenna, the 345 culvert unloading station, the 415 diesel fueling station, the 375 turntable, the rarely used transfer table. The red light on the controller goes on when the tracks are aligned. And the number 38 water tower. Introduced in 1946, it has a recirculating water pump. The outside wall of the tank is in reality 2 walls, one 3/16 of an inch away from the other. The area between the walls holds about the same amount of water as a reservoir under the roof. This reservoir is hidden from view by the slant of the roof. When a button is pushed, the spout lowers and the water from between the walls is pumped to the reservoir under the roof. As the wall chamber empties, it gives the impression of water draining out of the tank and into a tender. When the button is released, the pump stops and the spout raises. This is a superb layout, although Michael Premack would like to add some scenic backdrops, and perhaps this and that.
I don't think a layout's ever finished. I think there's always something you can find to do on it, and that's probably half the thrill of working on it. There's always something to do, and I think if you were really ever satisfied 100% with it and all capabilities and operating characteristics, I don't think you'd be very happy with railroading. I think that's the time to throw in the towel and say, well, that's it, I've done it all. And if you can say that, then I think you better start looking for a new hobby. I don't think we ever grow up, really. I think the toys that you have as a youngster, if you're going to stay involved with them, are the toys that you take through to till the time you leave this earth.
Oh, listen to the jingle, the rumble and the roar, as she glides along the woodland to the hill and by the shore. Hear the mighty rush of the engine, hear the lonesome hobo squall, riding through the jungle on the Wabash Cannonball.